By far the most embarrassing thing right now for the Walt Disney Company is exactly how they are handling the damage control when it comes to Snow White's box office metrics as we speak. It is not performing well at all when it comes to ticket sales, when it comes to how it's performing in the theaters, and as well as just the regular critics, and even the once trusted critics by Disney, are now beginning to turn their back on the Walt Disney Company. And you know what? Rightfully so, because there's a lot of things going on with this film, not just due to the agenda, but also to the story itself that are very lackluster. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Bob Iger, as I like to call him Bob Liger, because he does nothing but lie to the shareholders and to his core customer base as long as possible until the following year. Now, we already know that Bob Iger plans to step down by 2026, which is exactly why he is heading into damage control, not just for Disney in general, but now for their latest feature, Snow White. Let's get into this, shall we? Now, one thing about Bob Iger, and I'll say this, time and time again, that Bob Iger will continue to say whatever he has to say to protect and defend Snow White, to really prop up this movie more than what it really is, and really just make it seem like that it really is coming from a lot of critics that are actually creating these agendas, if you will, as he likes to claim. So let's get into this. Now, what's interesting about Bob Iger, yet again, is that we know that he is trying to pretty much repair his image as a CEO. Ever since he came back after the Bob Chapek era, it really has gone downhill ever since. You know, everything to do with the Marvels, everything to do with The Acolyte, and now you got this Snow White feature. I mean, that's just the beginning of everything here. But what's interesting is that with the Walt Disney Company endlessly freaking out over the box office performance surrounding Snow White, already Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, entered damage control yet again in a desperate move to water down the situation. Now, Bob Iger delivered the following, where he actually went on to state, "As CEO, it is my responsibility to address our goals with our ever-evolving business model, not just on Disney Plus, but also with our theatrical releases, such as Snow White. What we do not tolerate here at the Disney Company are false narratives that are obviously coming from the political landscape to hinder our success with a film that represents diversity, equity, and inclusion properly. We also take pride in equality with our films. Snow White, in particular, is a great example of that. We welcome criticism toward our films, but what we do not welcome are a level of criticism that are obviously coming from a politically driven place. We are very optimistic in the performance of our Snow White film, financially speaking, with the projections that we have for the metrics at the box office. We have no doubt in our mind that this will be a success, but what we won't tolerate are critics that hold an obvious agenda to ruin the experience for others that plan to attend a film like this that celebrates diversity and just how important it is in this industry. It is in my best interest to address our obstacles with the loud, opinionated side of the public that holds an obvious ulterior motive with this critique over this film. We ask everyone to let the product speak for itself and to let the story speak for itself, because here at the Walt Disney Company, we value to create and produce entertaining stories. We do not invest in any kind of an ideology, nor do we engage in any kind of a culture war with our customers or shareholders alike that value our products. Now guys, again, there is another lie by Bob Iger. They did exactly just that over the course of many different years, since like 2016, right? It all began really in 2015 if you really took a very close look, but it really began to blossom at 2016 with all of their nonsense, with their ideology, with their overall agenda. He's one to say that the critics are coming from, an agenda or coming from a place that holds an ulterior motive or a politically driven landscape. He has no clue what he's talking about, because that's exactly what Disney themselves have been doing for almost an entire decade at this point. Actually, a decade, maybe even more than that at this point. But we already know that Bob Iger is going to do whatever he has to do, say whatever he has to say to make it seem like Snow White is a box office success. So we are already dealing with two box office failures during this month. We have The Alto Knights by Warner Brothers featuring Robert De Niro. That bombed at the box office terribly, a lot worse than Snow White. But Snow White is another example, and it could very well do, worse than the Dumbo feature, based on the way things are going on right now. But we aim to, of course, really kind of shape up everything to do with all of these studios. That's exactly why the public is speaking up. That's why a lot of people, within the general public are speaking their mind now, because they're fed up with the way things are going by the studios within the film industry. So he goes on to actually move on forward by stating the following yet again: "We do not respect critics that hold on to any kind of a false narrative on their part. We here at the Disney Company still believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is the best path to create a fair and balanced story to entertain so many around the world that come from different ethnic backgrounds. We also thought it was necessary to let go from the source material in order to create an unexpected story that provides some changes to the popular tale. We ask everyone to actually let that sink in and to let out all the noise and to actually value the fact that we were able to bring a return to an iconic Disney character in a way that fits the times. It's best to ignore the noise out there." So again, he's going on about the noise and how the critics are just nothing more than just noise and loud opinionated voices that really have no valid input, right? That's basically what Bob Iger is really just saying there outright. And this is exactly why I say that Bob Iger is the worst CEO, period, when it comes to the film industry. I really do think that he outperforms the incompetence coming from Bob Chapek, who once was at Disney for a very short while. But at the end of the day, we all knew that Bob Iger was going to return, right? We all saw that coming once Chapek stepped in. He was nothing more than the fall guy to really serve as a temporary CEO. I mean, we all knew that right from the get-go. But Bob Iger, when he came back, I still believe it was a major mistake for the board to even allow that to happen, or to even let that be the plan from the beginning. Because here you have Bob Iger, again, scapegoating, saying that the critics have no valid reason or no valid inputs or opinions out there, and that it's only coming from politics. And it really just, kind of shows you exactly how far Disney is willing to go to really just scapegoat with this movie, to really just make it seem like that this movie is a very big success, doing fantastic numbers, when in reality, it's doing quite the opposite. In fact, the weekend box office metrics so far are looking so lackluster that it could very well be on par with Dumbo, as we talked about a couple of days ago. He goes on to conclude, however, "We do not respect inflammatory comments covered as a critique. It's that type of behavior coming from the public that we find to be very disingenuous. We hope everyone sees our latest film to celebrate this character that's been in existence for well over 100 years. We hope everyone makes the right choice." So it's interesting how he points that out there, about how this character's been around for well over 100 years. Of course, if you throw the Brothers Grimm tales into the equation, it goes back very, very, very far. And they are just completely disrespecting the source material, not just to their own 1937 film, but to the Brothers Grimm tale. The Brothers Grimm, by the way, is where it really all began, where it really all cemented and, kind of was created, that led to the 37 original by Disney. And it's very ironic. The 37 original film made Disney, and this movie could very well end Disney. It's that ironic. I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.